do some reviews. Let's start. Where else could we start but with Slipknot, the 6th album from the Iowan 9-piece Maniacs. Is called We Are Not Your Kind. And like any Slipknot release, this is an absolutely massive moment in the world of metal. Slipknot now are as big a metal band as you could possibly imagine. So much like when Metallica or Iron Maiden or insert massive metal band here, when they release an album and people get all frothy about it.
Dying Fetus?
Yeah,
That's a callback to about 7 years ago.
Yeah, it is. I like it. The Slipknot album being released is big shit.
It's a big fucking deal. It's a BFD.
And it's been what now? What are we saying? 4 years since the...
No, I think it's 5.
5, yeah, 2014.
5. Yeah,
2014, we got 0.5, the Grey Chapter, which...
should we do a recap on that quickly?
Yeah,
you were about to, sorry.
I felt that 0.5, the Grey Chapter... In fact, I'm going to say this straight off the bat, actually. I'd never thought I'd like another Slipknot record again. I think All Hope Is Gone is bum. There's a couple of good songs in it, but overall, it is a proper, 4 out of 10 record. It's crap.
Easily my least favourite Slipknot record. I don't think I'd say 4 out of 10, but it is definitely my least favourite.
I think All Hope Is Gone is actually shite.
All Hope Is bum.
All Hope is definitely gone for me to ever listen to that record ever again. So when 0.5, the Grey Chapter came along with a lack of Paul Gray, who's obviously one of the main songwriters, and a lack of Joey Jordison, who obviously played such a massive part in shaping the sound of what Slipknot was, I was a little bit nervous about that record, but hopeful always, because they are one of the big metal bands, as we've already mentioned.
Yep.
And it was I think it made sense because of the subject matter and the sort of the surrounding sort of story of 0.5, the Grey Chapter, this kind of tribute album to Paul Gray. It made sense that it was a little bit less frantic and a little bit less like the early Slipknot that most of us would have fallen in love with.
Bar 1 or 2 exceptions.
Bar 1 at Custer.
Custer is the main
obviously
one.
is the main
That
one.
is the one.
That is the main one. But yeah.
I would say I really enjoyed 0.5, the Great Chapter, and I do feel like I don't feel alone in that, but I do feel like I'm in a minority with that. Mm-hmm. Again, not my favourite Slipknot record, but I think it is. I feel like a lot of people put All Hope Is Gone and 0.5 on a similar level.
Yeah, I think 0.5 is definitely better than All Hope
I
Is
think
Gone.
I personally think 0.5 is quite a bit better than All Hope Is Gone, but I understand that's
it's
not
a 7
popular
next
opinion.
to a 4 for me. Or a 6.
A 7, yeah.
6 or a 7.
Pushing an 8, maybe. I don't know.
Not pushing an 8.
I will say this. I believe it was in my top 20 of that year. I think it was like number 19 or something like that.
Okay.
But, if any record's in either of our top 20s, that's
good.
a great record. Do you know what I mean? So I will say that.
Although this was 2014, which was
That's
a
true,
pretty
which
slow
wasn't-
year,
yeah.
to be honest.
Yeah. But,
And so, here we are 5 years later. Like I said, I never really expected that we'd get another Slipknot album that I would really be that bothered about. I always thought there'll probably be a few songs that they'll be able to cherry pick out of each album to play. Still happy to hear, Psychosocial, whatever.
I'm not. Fucking hate that song.
The Devil in I, don't mind hearing
great
that.
song.
Custer, I think, is another one that I'm quite happy to hear. So I thought that was where we were with Slipknot, really. Now, we've
A lot of
spoken...
past tense talking here, I'm noticing.
We spoke before about the kind of surrounding chaos that was ensuing a few months ago when this album's kind of release was announced. So Unsainted was released as a single. We got to see the masks. This is a few weeks after Chris Fenn had kind of departed the band. No one knows who his replacement is still.
Although you were adamant that it was Chris Fenn.
I thought it was still Chris Fenn. Yeah, I just really thought it was a sort of they'd made up, but it's not. I was wrong. And then obviously Corey had double knee surgery, like 5 days before they returned on the Jimmy Fallon show, and then after that, I think it was literally 2 days later. Sean Crahan, who's the kind of band architect, I guess you'd say, the kind of, if not the main songwriter, but certainly the visual creative hub of Slipknot.
The visionary, the vision. Yeah.
His daughter passed away. So that threw kind of everything into pretty stark perspective, I think. Now, do you want to talk about sort of where I come in here? And because you can buy, I guess we're in a position now where you can currently buy and read the cover feature that I did for the latest issue of Metal Hammer.
I think it's the best place to talk about it.
Okay, cool. So if you get the latest Metal Hammer, Slipknot are on the front cover. 9 issues.
Yeah, 9
Apparently
issues.
it's the biggest selling issue they've done in over a year, M3.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that's good.
Because of your cover feature.
Yeah, well, hey, listen, I'm sure it played a part.
It's a new Slipknot record, yeah, I'm sure.
You know, yeah, it's obviously, you know, I was pretty excited to do it. Like, it's quite a big deal for me to have a cover feature and to get to do it with Slipknot, particularly in these circumstances. I felt like, as someone who bought the self-titled album the day it came out, who saw them at the Astoria back in 1999, who's kind of followed them, but not sycophantically followed them, because like I said, I have dropped off of interest over the years now and again here and there with Slipknot. I was actually quite looking forward to the challenge of writing that piece, because there is so much to talk about.
Bit of a dream job in lots of ways. I mean, I would have loved to have done that.
It was not easy to talk to those people in that time. I've interviewed Corey Taylor about five, I think it was about the 6th time. And Corey Taylor, even when talking to him about Paul Gray, back when the 0.5 the Grey chapter came out, Corey Taylor was always delightful company, right? Really outgoing and lovely. I got some time on the phone with him, and I don't want for a minute anyone to think that Corey Taylor was mean or awkward, or, do you know what I mean? It was not interested in talking to me. But Corey Taylor sounded like a man who had the weight of the world on his shoulders. And he spoke really passionately and eloquently to me about how people from the outside of Slipknot love the drama, love to concentrate on the drama. They want to talk about Joey. They want to talk about Paul. They want to talk about Paul's widow. They want to talk about who the new member is. They want to talk about Chris Fenn. They want to talk about Clown's daughter. They want to talk about the combustible nature of this band. But no one ever wants to talk about how the fact that this is a band who had, you know, 2 people have left over a 20-year period, essentially. Paul Gray's passed away. 2 people have left. In terms of when you look at bands with far less members, that's not a bad return, really, is it? It's a pretty good return.
Since the 1999 album. I mean, if you want to be pedantic, there's the Mate Feed Kill, but that's
But you know, the classic Slipknot lineup has only changed really through necessity. A couple of times, and you know, he was really adamant to point that out to me, and I thought that was kind of interesting to go into this record. And it felt like I spoke to Jim Root, and Jim Root told me how he felt like the last album was built rather than written, how it was kind of built in the studio with each individual member going in and doing their each individual parts, less like a band. Like how, you know, we've all seen pictures and grainy YouTube footage of Slipknot up at Indigo Ranch with Ross Robinson recording the first album, or recording Iowa, with all of them in the room together, jumping around, throwing things at each other, going fucking crazy. That's the first thing we think of Slipknot recording. That's the thing that goes into your head. And
to think of them coming in individually and just sitting down and doing their parts.
I mean, a bit like,
happens to loads of bands, though.
It does.
I remember talking to Chino about it with Saturday Night Rest, the 5th Deftones record, which I actually love. But you know, that was very much the same case. Blah, blah, blah.
But Jim Root told me that they rehearsed these songs and they were written together in a room, like collaboratively, and that when they came to record them, they took the click track off, and the versions you hear on this record are the versions without a click. He said, which gives them much more life. And I think that's usually true of most records, certainly like punk records and stuff. I spoke to, and Jim Root actually was a lovely human being. I didn't get to speak to Clown.
Understandably.
Obvious reasons. I mean, how he was even on that stage at Download, I think is unbelievable.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, I cannot believe that he managed to make it to that European tour. Let alone, talking to a fucking idiot like me. Like, of course. And I talked to Mick Thompson, who basically just kind of likes playing guitar. That's all he cares about. He just wants to play guitar. And
pretty good at it as well.
And he's pretty good at it. And I spoke to Sid Wilson, and Sid Wilson is a very unique individual.
From reading the feature, he appeared to be the most
combustible. He was the only one. Now, so I asked him, I said, okay, so it's 20 years of Slipknot. Now, my big kind of thing that I said to him that I felt, and I felt as a fan, this is what I wanted to know, because this is why I felt like I wasn't that interested in the last couple of Slipknot records. First two Slipknot records are great. I also really love Volume 3. I love Volume 3. I think it's fucking brilliant. But when I think of Slipknot, I do think of the crazy second stage Ozfest band. That's my first exposure to them. And, why wouldn't you want to kind of hope that you get that for as long as you possibly can? But the truth is, it's very difficult for, as we've mentioned with, be it Slayer or Dillinger or, whatever band it is that was split up through, Let Live split up, like, and I said, Black Flag, Let Live, Refused, Bad Brains. I think at one point Mick Thompson went, hey, Metallica's still out on tour together. Like, why should we ever think about giving up? And it's like, because you're not a band like that. You used to set fire to each other. You used to jump off of speaker stacks. Like, how can you do that 20 years down the line? How can you still be as heavy a band? And
how does a band like Slipknot grow up gracefully?
Yes, exactly. And I did this 4 individual chats with 4 individual members of Slipknot. And then the next week, we did the photo shoot with them, and that was quite a very 10 minutes before they went on stage, they just kind of rocked up, all of them together, kind of. And I wasn't privy to the actual photo shoot, I wasn't there, but it was kind of, I was around when people were going, oh god, like we've had to push it back, and they're cutting it really fine. And I don't know, man, if you'd seen them at Download as well, like I hadn't heard this record at the time, so it's quite difficult for me, like writing this feature, not really having heard the album, but only kind of going on their responses to me being like, to be honest, I thought as a fan, I want to be as not antagonistic, but I want to be able to kind of ask the questions that a Slipknot fan from 1999 would want to know 20 years later. Are you still that band? And I walked away from that, and I walked away from that Download show going, there is suddenly a chance, maybe, I reckon, that they've got some sort of second wind.
Well, it's also pertinent because when All Out Life came out, which we should point out is not on this record, but it was a single that was I don't know, it was sort of a precursor to this record. It's also where the title comes from. I think when that single came out, a lot of people were like, oh, this sounds like Slipknot. Old Slipknot. Yeah. Which got a lot of people excited, whether Slipknot in 2019 want to acknowledge that or not, that there was an awful lot of people who were saying that. And I think, maybe to a lesser extent, but I think the second single, Unsainted, had an element of that as well, maybe. Unsainted, certainly, to me, it's one of the few Slipknot songs where you feel like, and I don't mean this maybe as disparagingly as it's going to sound, but it's one of the few Slipknot songs where you feel like all 9 members are actually contributing. Yeah, to be honest, there's so much going on in it, and like Sid is all over it. I mean, Sid is all over this record. Full stop. We'll get into that more in a bit. But like, I think there were a lot of people who were going, "Oh, is this going to be a record which is more akin to old Slipknot than latter day Slipknot?" I don't think the record as a whole is. I think it's very much a latter day Slipknot album. Albeit one with genuine fire in its belly. Absolutely. That I've not heard since Volume 3.
So
let's just do this now. It's the best Slipknot record for 15 years by a long way.
I would say, a massive margin.
Yeah.
A massive, massive, massive margin.
Yeah.
I think this record's fucking brilliant.
Oh, cool. Okay. I think Jim Root said somewhere, I think it was on NME actually, but he said that they went in with this record and they really wanted to make it feel like an album from beginning to end.
Yeah.
And I think looking back at it, and I'd never really realised this about Slipknot, but I don't know if they'd ever really properly managed that before. Volume 3 is probably the closest they got.
I think Iowa's the closest they've got, because Iowa is...
Maybe.
I think Iowa... Yeah, I think Volume 3... depending on what day you get me, Volume 3 is my favourite Slipknot record.
I would agree, actually.
And I think it's got the most stuff, and it's probably overall the most... interesting journey of the first 3, of the first 5, in fact, of all of them.
Of all of them, yes. Yes.
But I think there is a theme throughout Iowa that is consistent to all of Iowa. There is a feeling that permeates that record from beginning to end that makes it feel like one whole thing, I think.
Maybe. I mean, what I would say is, I've said on this podcast in the past that I tend to not be a massive fan of Slipknot singles.
Yeah.
So, Psychosocial drives me crazy. Wait and Bleed really stands out on first Slipknot record. When I listen to Volume 3, I usually skip Duality. Yeah, because I've heard it so much.
What about Left Behind on Iowa?
Left Behind just about works on Iowa, I feel.
I think it does, yeah. I think
and Heretic Anthem was technically a single. My Plague, yeah, just about. So, yeah, I can see what you're saying with the Iowa thing. But I do feel like with a lot of Slipknot records in the past, Dead Memories, Snuff, you get the Slipknot album tracks, which tend to be a bit more experimental, a bit weirder, and basically the stuff that I'm a bit more interested in.
Yeah.
And then you get the singles, which are just slightly more geared towards a melodicism, which will get more people on board. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not trying... That's probably going to sound...
A banger.
Yeah. Now, that might sound like I'm being very cynical about it. I'm not trying to be. I just feel like that is how Slipknot have been in the past. What I really love about this record, I quite purposefully didn't listen to the singles before it came out. And then when I listened to the album, I didn't look at the track listing either. And I didn't know what songs the singles were. Yeah. And it felt like more...
You must have known Unsainted was a single.
I hadn't heard Unsainted until I listened to it a few days ago. So, so the first couple of times I listened to it, I was trying to guess what the singles were, and I just couldn't figure it out. And I think I'm really pleased about that, because I think this album, it's a bit of a weird one, because I think if you pick out moments from it individually, I'm not sure how well it works. I mean, I'm sure it will do live, to be honest, but even saying I don't think it works is untrue. I just think it works better as a whole, I suppose, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. It's definitely, it feels like a long time. I mean, even that first Slipknot record, and I know that people will probably be like fucking chucking their speaker across the room at me saying this, but even that first Slipknot record, it drops off in the second half.
Yeah.
It does. It does drop off, and it's great. The first half of it is unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's absolutely unbelievable.
Yeah.
And the second half of it is really good.
Yes, I would agree. Yeah.
And so...
The first half is a 5 and the second half is a 4.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Out of 5.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think, I think Volume 3, most of the new experimental things they do work. But like you say, there are bits on it that are just often don't work as well.
Yeah.
Whereas this... it's felt like a long time since I would listen to, I think I listened to a Slipknot album and be able to listen to it all the way through.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And actually, again, I got the record. I counted up how long it was, and I was like 63 minutes. And I thought, oh, because I think every single Slipknot record, even the classics, have had a little bit of gumph on them. To be honest, if I'm honest,
No, I agree.
And I thought 63 minutes. I was expecting some gumph, and I feel like, for the most part, I mean, if I'm being really, really picky, there were bits that maybe I would admit, but actually, for the most part, I was really surprised at how well it worked as a 63-minute journey.
I think this is very good.
Yeah, I think it's very good.
This is, if you are a modern metal band, this is how you do it, I think.
Yeah.
I think it comes out of the traps. The first kind of 5 tracks are just such a fizzy, giddy thrill. Do you know what I mean? Like it's all and it all feels like, Slipknot have had a tendency to kind of, particularly on 0.5, the Grey Chapter, but even the Blister Exists on Volume 3 as well, and start with a sort of slower one. Start with a kind of mood piece that sort of eases you in, but there's not really any of that on this. It starts with Insert Coin, which is a sort of...
I was going to say Insert Coin.
Yeah, but that's an intro. That's not a song.
No, sure.
And Unsainted is starts with a little bit of a build up.
There's 30, 40 seconds or so of build up. I don't disagree necessarily.
As opposed to full blown songs that are just... I mean, the Blister Exists. That is a song.
Yeah.
And it takes 4 minutes before it kind of kicks in, whereas they don't do that.
Do you mean Prelude 3.0 into
Blister
Exists?
Into Blister Exists. That takes a long time before it kind of actually kicks in.
Yeah.
Whereas, and on this, once they kick in, away you go. Like, there's very little let up in the first sort of five songs on it.
Generally, I'd agree. I would say though that, I mean, by now, I don't think Slipknot fans should be going, oh, I want an album that's going to sound like the debut or Iowa anymore, because
you ain't getting
I don't think they are that band. And I think Sid sort of saying what he did in that feature is a little, I mean, sorry to say it, but I think it is a bit short-sighted. You are a different person to who you were 20 years ago. Everyone is. And to not acknowledge that just seems a little silly to me. But the beauty of this is, the last 2 records, I didn't feel like Slipknot were growing old gracefully. And this, I feel like they are, by going into moodier, more atmospheric territory. Going into, I don't think they're trying to be this band, but Cult of Luna-esque stuff.
Yeah,
in terms of using Sid and Craig, the samples guy, a bit more.
So much more Sid and Craig on this record.
Yeah, so much more. And I feel like they've been shunted aside a fair bit.
Well, yeah, I mean, 0.5
in the past,
as to go back to what I was told when writing this feature, is that by Corey and by Jim Root, is that they all got in a room and they created this together. And Corey, one of the things he said to me was sometimes it was quite liberating for me to give up control a bit and go, maybe the band has a better idea than what's right for this than I do. And there was all these things before, oh, it's Stone Sour, now it's Corey's fucking ego project, it's not a proper band anymore. People were saying that after the last record. That was one of the things that people were saying. It's become like Stone Sour. And I think, it's a bit much, but you can kind of vaguely understand why people would say that.
Vaguely.
Yeah. I don't think you can say that at all now.
No, I think people will still, because...
but they've got absolutely no...
No, I don't think they've really got a leg to stand on. I think people still will, because Corey sings a fair amount on this record, but when Corey's singing, he's really... His vocal hooks on this record are really fucking good.
Yeah.
They're really good. The melodies are really strong, and possibly even the strongest. He had such... It felt like the clean melodies on the self-titled record were very fleeting, but when they were there, they're amazing. Things on Purity or whatever, and I suppose they're more frequent on this record, but they feel like a similar level of quality. I feel like, and I can't always say that that's been the case with Taylor's melodies throughout their career.
No, yeah, especially on the last couple of records, I've not felt like those slower, more kind of made for radio songs have stuck with me at all. Whereas, I mean, I will say I love the way this starts. It's, the first up to Critical Darling particularly, which I think is great, was track 6. That's got a really nice melodic hook to it. But it's also
it begins with Corey really spitting it out, almost in a spit it out fashion.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to do that.
It's got a rapped kind of
yeah. But
it's a great vocal performance.
It's a great vocal, yeah.
And also, this has come for him. This is written. He said this is sort of the most personal album that he's ever written before, and I think you can kind of tell that there is like a bit of genuine. So what I felt the last couple, and I maybe feel like a bit of a cunt for saying this, because obviously, like, I'm sure the last record had a lot of very personal stuff about Paul, and was very, very heartfelt. But I didn't quite feel like the last couple of records necessarily felt to me like they were about anything. Do you know what I mean? I didn't really think it was Slipknot just going, like, people equal shit. It's great to chant in the field, and it's a cool hook, but it is what it is. It's just like people equal shit, and if you're fucking brutal and disgusting, like when Slipknot were that works really well. Yeah. But when you start to refine your sound a bit and you're not that anymore, your kind of lyrical content maybe starts to sound a bit dull. Yeah. And I think Corey sounds like, you can kind of tell that this record means something to him. You can tell that the songs that he's singing are actually about failed relationships, the failed relationship that he had, and the kind of the depression that set in after that. And my favorite song on it personally is Spiders.
Oh yeah, okay, fantastic.
Which song. I think is brilliant, and is really, although Slipknot have done things like that to an extent a little bit before, they haven't really done. It kind of reminds me like of Fragile era 9 Inch Nails. It's got this kind of industrialized mechanical beat behind it, and it's kind of
with a very twinkly, spooky piano refrain over the top.
Yeah, and then this kind of chugged guitar part comes in, and it all feels quite creepy and threatening, but restrained. Yeah, and
which is something I feel like they wouldn't have been capable of.
Yeah.
On the first couple of records,
and it appears to me, to my ears, to be about a kind of his kind of paranoia at the outside world. I mean, I think another thing that Corey's been talking about is his sort of social media addiction. This like Corey Taylor becoming a meme. Corey Taylor, what would Corey Taylor say? And what does Corey Taylor think? All that stuff. And I think that's something which actually has probably affected him quite a lot. If you've just got people all the time going like, all you do is talk and give your, people fucking beg for his opinion all the time, and he gives it. And then at this point, he's just become like, it's a stick to beat him with. Oh, all you do is fucking talk. You're an egomaniacal, blah, 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 big mouth motherfucker. And I think him having to see that and read all that, because, I mean, he, again, to go back to my feature, he said to me, I see all of that. I see all of that shit people write about me. He's like, I've seen it all, and it's fucking shit. Like, it makes you feel shit sometimes. And I feel like that song kind of addresses that a bit, that like, that kind of paranoia and that creeping thing that you feel like you have to suppress, that like addiction to, social media or the outside world. I don't know, but that's kind of what I got from it.
Yeah, I think it is definitely a moment on this record, undoubtedly. Again, I mean, something I put in my notes, I definitely agree with you. It's a brilliant song. I don't know if it's my favourite, but I definitely agree it's very, very good. Taking it out of context of the record, it feels like it would lose a lot of its power.
Yeah, I wonder if that's I mean, I haven't. I've listened to this album beginning to end every time I listen to it.
Yeah. And I don't strictly mean that as a criticism, to be honest, because I feel like this so clearly should be listened to as a whole. But I love the fact that it feels like Slipknot have been trying to do that more experimental stuff for a while. I mean, I think they started it with Volume 3, and actually I think most of Volume 3 is incredibly successful.
Yeah, me too.
But here they've just done it with a, I don't know, level of restraint, which just feels ever so slightly more sophisticated than they have done on the last couple of records, I suppose. And Spiders is a really good example of that.
Yeah.
I think even Orphan actually is the next track is quite a good example of that.
Is.
Starts sounding a bit like Spider Bite from Jerry Cantrell's Degradation Trip, but then becomes like really quite fast, and it moves into becoming quite a fast Slipknot track. It's one of the faster tracks on the record. And I should say as well that this album, the majority of it is quite mid-paced, which is often code, I suppose, for a little bit ploddy and dull. Although I don't mean that in this case. I think at this stage in their career, I think the mid-paced, moody, atmospheric stuff works better for them.
It works, and also because they are utilising. I think it works because they're now utilising everything within their armory. Do you know what I mean?
So much more so, yeah.
Definitely loads more Sid, loads more Craig, and not just, I used to think Sid just went and that was it. And he kind of did for the first couple of albums. He'd just make a load of like noise on scratching, and then he'd be off for 2 songs. And here, he is used less sparingly, and his contribution feels like it is part of the
paramount to the song.
Yeah, the tapestry of the song, as opposed to just like. And here's a bit where we all kind of go crazy.
Yeah.
So I think they're kind of they're really gelling. And it seems ridiculous when you've been in a band for over 20 years, but this is an album where it feels like it might be the album that they gel on as well as they ever have as a band.
In a weird way, or certainly as it sounds like musically, certainly. You've skipped over Liar's Funeral, and I'm sort of curious as to why, because I think it's... Liar's Funeral, I've read a couple of other reviews and stuff, and I've seen Liar's Funeral get quite a lot of derision, and I've seen it get quite a lot of love, and I'm curious as to where you sit on that.
I didn't skip over it.
Not
on purpose.
Sorry, as in you've not spoken about it in this review yet.
No. I think it's because it's different to... I think because Up to Critical Darling, which actually ends quite like... with a melodic kind of more sort of sorrowful. Is that a word?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. It'll do.
Yeah.
Most of that up to sort of track 6 is quite like, Slipknot. And then it changes a bit. Well, what do you think of
Well, it's the first track that comes in with an acoustic guitar.
Yeah.
It's definitely incorrect to describe it as a ballad. But when it begins, it sort of reminds me of Circle from Volume 3 a little bit.
Yeah.
Just because they both got acoustic guitar on them. But I really feel like it builds into this massive, stomping, lurching epic.
Yeah, see, I agree. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I have to say, when I first heard the acoustic, after that opening, when I first heard the acoustic guitar, I kind of went, keep it going. Like, let's keep this fucking train cantering. Let's keep it rolling. But by the end of the song, like you say, it really built into something different.
Yeah, but it builds so well. That's the thing. I think,
I feared we were going to get another snuff. Or, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but it's definitely not that. So Circle, when I compare it to Circle on Volume 3, that is high praise. I think Circle was an incredible song.
Yeah, it's good.
So I do mean that as a compliment. I think it, and it building in. I mean, it becomes something totally different to that, to be honest. But it reminded me of that to begin with, and then it just has a lot. I mean, I understand what you're saying about it starting, and jumps out of the tracks, and it's really. I mean, there is variation in the first.
There's variation, but it's an aggressive record.
Yeah, it begins as such, but then towards the end, there's a run of 3 tracks. I think it's Orphans, My Pain, and there's one other one.
Not Long for This World.
There we go. those 3 tracks feel so much more kind of moody and atmospheric. And yeah, you already mentioned it, Nine Inch Nails-esque, something going more into the realms of the sort of soundscapes that Reznor would go into. I don't think it's as good as Reznor at his best, because to be honest, there's very little that is. But I think Slipknot are starting to really embrace that in a really, really positive and really well done way. And it's really refreshing to hear that, because judging from the last couple of records, I wasn't sure if Slipknot ever were going to, I keep going back to this, but I wasn't sure if Slipknot ever were going to grow old gracefully. But this feels like them doing that and going more into those kind of Cult of Luna passages and those kind of things. I think the difficulty with this now is, like, you know, if they're going to continue down this path, are they going to be then compared to those bands? I don't know if they ever will be or not, because maybe Cult of Luna fans won't ever take them seriously. I don't know.
But if they, you know, and I think they could be, like, if they're, you know, they open the door to a lot of extreme metal and death metal when Iowa came out. So if they can open the door to make people, their fans, go and listen to, you know, the sort of fans who would never listen to Cult of Luna or Neurosis, if they can get people to listen to that sort of thing, then that's a great thing. And Slipknot have the power to be able to do that.
They absolutely do. And it feels like this album could be a stepping stone to a Neurosis or a Cult of Luna or a Bosk or whatever.
Yeah. And when you think that's a band, when we're mentioning them, and this is a band who, I mean, you know, we don't know what their touring plans are, but presumably when they come back, they'll be doing Wembley. There's a lot on this record that I want to hear live, a lot. And I can't say that about 0.5. I definitely can't say that about All Hope Is Gone. I don't like All Hope Is Gone. No. But this is really fucking good.
I definitely think it's the most consistent Slipknot record they've released in a long time. There is a debate to say it may be the most consistent Slipknot record ever. I don't think the highs are the highest Slipknot have ever been, but it's just really nice to have a Slipknot record where you sit down, listen to the whole thing and go, yeah, I'm happy to listen to most of that, you know, because there's usually moments on most Slipknot records where you're just like, okay, I don't really need this, or this doesn't feel like it fits in with the journey that I'm being taken on or whatever. And I feel like maybe this is the first Slipknot record where that's happened and they've achieved that.
It's pretty good. It's pretty exciting, man.
Yeah,
to be good. 20 years in, to be getting that fucking excellent work. So anyway, there you go. We Are Not Your Kind by Slipknot is out right now. I mean, if you're interested in metal at all, presumably you're pretty excited, and I hope if you haven't heard it yet, you get even more excited about it now, because I have to say, I think it's great. I think this is... It's definitely, when we come to doing albums of the year, top 20 albums of the year, I had not considered that this might be in the mix. And it's definitely in the mix. Definitely for me. Really is.
I feel like I need a bit more time with it, but possibly, yeah.
Okay.